Let's check out the very first campaign box set for Star Wars Armada. Spiky bits. What's up, Star Wars Armada maniacs? Rob Baer with you again today, showcasing the brand new Corellian Conflict campaign box from FFG, of course. This is a really interesting product for a myriad of reasons, actually. I know a lot of people are kind of already hating it early on, and I was a little kind of saddened by it. Like, I really enjoy the whole thing about this. So breaking it down without revealing a super lot of details, first off, this is a $29.99 campaign box from Fantasy Flight for Star Wars Armada. Now, you can probably tell my hands are about probably slightly average, bigger than most people's hands. So yeah, the box itself is very small, to be quite honest. So it might be a little off-putting to folks at first. Like, here is the blister pack for Armada. So that, gives you an idea of the actual size. But what it lacks in girth, shall we say, it actually makes up for in a lot of exciting content inside the box itself. So let's take a look at the listed contents on the back here that they normally do. Okay, so it says this expansion includes 12 brand new objective cards offering new challenges, path to victory, etc. 16 new squadron cards allowing you to field legendary pilots and squadrons of the Galactic Civil War and combat. Now, the thing that it also does is it allows you to play a 6-person league/campaign that allows you to progress your fleets to acquire more upgrades, as well as suffer damage, and you might even get knocked out and want to restart your campaign kind of type thing. But it also introduces an even more exciting dynamic. Now, this is what some people are calling a cardboard expansion. There's no minis in here. But what's cool about this is it's very similar to, say, the Imperial Aces or the Rebel Aces box sets for Star Wars X-Wing, also for Fantasy Flight. Whereas those gave you cards to upgrade existing ships, this set gives you also cards. They give you additional abilities that Squadrons didn't have before. So kind of where we saw a lot of the expansions that just came out in Wave 5 include upgrade cards to allow you to play ships from the first couple of waves in more better ways and new exciting ways, and to make them relevant once again, kind of on the sneak, on the down low. This box gives you new versions of Squadrons and also the cardboard punch cards to upgrade your existing stands to these new exciting Squadron and aces, so to speak. So let's go inside the box now that I've kind of said my spiel to kind of set this whole thing up here. It's got a whole manual in here that has its own index even, so it's rather mighty. I mean, there's a lot of reading to do in here, and I'm not going to go over the whole thing. I'm going to touch on some key points that I feel like, this is being a first look review, kind of gives you guys the idea whether you want to buy it or not, and to vote with your hobby dollars. And that's kind of what this is about. I'm not going to explain everything verbatim and how every little mechanic works, but I'm going to point out some stuff that I found pretty interesting. Once you get inside the box itself, you have some really exciting printed stickers. Now, this is obviously a finite resource here. You can't get more of these unless you buy another box set, so to speak. So that kind of sucks in one regard, but you do not have to use these on your campaign map itself. They say you can just use the campaign map as a reference. And then there's also 2 big punch cards full of material that you're going to need, including the new debris clouds, which actually block besides obscuring, you just can't shoot through them. From what I remember reading, 3 new sets of asteroids and a new station, and we'll talk about that more later. Then there's diplomat tokens and spynet tokens. Over here, you've got your neutral fleet to kind of keep track of things. You're a veteran. These are that's the non-exhausted and the exhausted tokens for any ship or squadron that actually upgrades itself and gains an additional ability, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. So not only can you get knocked out, or your ships can become scarred, they call it, and weakened, you can also gain abilities too. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword, which makes it really exciting there. And then they got some little spaceman tokens. I forget exactly what those do. I didn't read too far into it, but that's another mechanic that you can use in addition to the whole resource thing on the systems themselves inside the Corellian subsector there. So here's your punch cards for the upgrade that come in here, which you'll notice are existing ships. You got the Interceptor, you got the Bomber, you got the TIE Advance, you've got the normal TIE, the X-Wing, the Y-Wing, the A-Wing, and the B-Wing. And of course, so you've got the normal ships, or a normal squadron card, and then also one of the veteran pilots that go along with it. And some crossover to X-Wing and some the X-Wing miniatures game, and some don't. Then you've got this fancy smancy paper team roster and rebel rosters right here, which you might want to take photocopies of. It's a great way to keep track of your campaign, but of course, unless you want to spend another $30 to pick up the box set here, well, that's going to be a thing. So there's your overall, and your campaign consists of up to 6 players. So each side will have 3, or I think you can actually go up to 8. Nope, I think it's just 6 actually. And then here's your fleet rosters for each player, and there's 6 of these in here, which has the sides, so you can have all your ships, your squadrons, whether they're veteran status or scarred. Scarred's actually really bad. You lose shields and defensive tokens, which can get pretty rough. We're going to talk about that more here in a few minutes. And then your objectives, fleet points, battle records, etc., etc. There's 6 of these, like I said. We don't need to show them all to you. Big stack of them. Boom. And then you've got the sector map, which is a nice little fold-out kind of type deal, which gets pretty substantial. I mean, it's bigger than the normal X-Wing League poster or Fleet League poster, but it's not too crazy big. And I apologize for not being able to show you this on camera, but here it is. And like I said, it's about the same size as a normal poster, give or take, probably a little bit bigger, that you would see come in Armada. Now, these particular planets in the whole sector here are really interesting because they give you resource points and victory bonuses, which you can use then to purchase more ships and upgrade cards for your fleet. So these are actually really important. But a quick way to get a lot of like points really quick, they say in here, is to conduct raids and such down the hyperplanes, or hyperlanes rather. So these, you'll notice, have some pretty big boosts on them. And then the stuff out here in the cut might have a little bit more, but they're a little bit harder to get to, etc., etc. So there's a little bit of strategy there, and I'll leave it to you guys to kind of figure that all out there. So neat little thing. And then the stickers go right there. There'll be rebel bases, destroyed things, etc., etc. Again, you can just use this as a visual aid and announce like where your tokens are going, your diplomat tokens, your spynet tokens, all sorts of stuff like that. That's basically how it works. And then it gets into the bottom of the box, which has lots of space for all your tokens, of course, and the cards, the upgrade cards, which we're going to probably talk about last because there's a lot of these here. And I really want to give you guys a quick overview of how the actual campaign works, because now you've seen all the juicy stuff about the campaign itself. And now you probably got a few questions like, hey, well, what's the campaign all about? And that is where it gets really interesting, I feel like, because one of the cool things is there's new types of missions. There's ways, like I said, to upgrade your ships. And by upgrade, that might be a little bit of a misnomer, because what you actually do is you only start with one upgrade card. and you kind of have to build up to more. So yes, you are upgrading your ships in a sense, but from one upgrade card on a ship, you know, you can only do so much there. A lot of times I think you're going to be spending your points on fixing your ships. They get messed up in battle, so to speak. So it opens up and a lot of different things, like new rules here. You've got the new squadron cards and objective cards, which we're going to go over here in a minute. Then there's the short player edges set up for some of the missions, where basically it goes from the normal setup, which would be top down, long edge, to long ways, which is hammer and anvil in Warhammer 40k, if you are familiar with that. And now your range or your deployment zone is actually 2 of the sticks, so 24 inches up on both sides, and the full length of the table right here, left to right. There's also some new upgrade cards which they talk about, some new mechanics about the stations. There's an unarmed station and an armed station, which are really interesting. The armed station I think has 13 hull, and it has, I want to say 4, but we'll see it in a minute, damage to squadrons, and you can't get crits off against it, etc., etc. So then it gets into playing the campaign, creating teams, building your fleets, and you guys actually go through phases where you meet, your team meets, you devise a strategy, and then you do challenges. So you actually say, hey, I want to fight you here, and then your opponent, the opposing team, is basically like, all right, you get to fight this guy. So it's like kind of cool in that regard. Whereas you might want to put, you know, it's that whole like choosing a team, like team captain kind of thing. There is a fleet, a supreme fleet admiral, but you might want to put out somebody that's maybe kind of buster on like a location that you suspect that the opponent might be going for in strength, whereas you save your heavy hitters for another point. Maybe you guys need resource points or something like that. So there's a little bit of strategy involved. You can't just go into this willy-nilly, but I feel like if you're playing Armada already at this point, it's a very tactical game. So you're probably well aware of all of the, you know, strategy within strategy, etc., etc. And it gets into all this here, like your gaming group management and stuff. Then here are the stickers. There's presence, there's outposts, there's rebel bases, base destroyed stickers, etc., etc. And then you actually don't know the exact location of the rebel bases. It's kind of kept a secret, and there's the rebel team could actually cheat, and there's a note in here about it. But that's obviously not in the spirit of the game. And there's, if you do that, well, there's words for people that do that. Poor sports is the first one that comes to mind, of course. You don't have to use the stickers, like I said. You can just use the map as a visual aid, so you don't have to keep spending the money. You can probably make photocopies of this stuff, you know, to save some cash. But I feel like if you're going to run it, you're going to pick it up. Maybe you want the upgrade cards, and then you have the rest of the stuff left over, so it all works out. There's a couple of phases to the campaign, and we're not going to get too far into that and how all that works. But just know that there's a certain way you start out. You should only start out with one upgrade card. Now, your whole fleet, you can only have one of the same commander or, you know, admiral, whatever you want to call him. So if you got a Vader, you can't have another Vader, you know, on an ISD. You could have, like, you know, Mahdi or whoever, you know. It makes sense because there's only one Vader in the universe, I guess, thank God. And it gives you some unique play opportunities. Also, if you're getting rocked and you don't want to lose your ship, I believe it's turn 4, 5, or 6, you can execute a hyperspace departure. And I believe if there isn't one of those gravity well tokens within a certain range, you just basically jump out of the board and out of play, and your ship is not destroyed. It does not become scarred. And scarred is the thing, which you can see right here, where if a scarred ship is deployed, if you lose your ship the next time you play with it, it becomes scarred. If it is deployed, it must choose and discard one defensive token starting out. And for squadrons, if a scarred squadron is deployed, it suffers 1 damage. So both are really bad in this game. There's also a set of objective cards that are green that are only for playing in this campaign fleet, or this campaign box league. But there's a lot of different cool abilities in there. So maybe it's something that you want to port over to future games, etc. But for right now, you know, they're trying to keep it kind of tight. And there's also hints in here that there will be additional of these boxes coming out, which wouldn't make sense, to be quite honest. We'll just kind of have to see how it goes. You know, FFG's always watching, always waiting. And then, of course, you've got, you can upgrade your ships if they become veteran status. And then you have the tokens here, which allow you a really special ability. When a ship reveals a command, it may spend its veteran token to gain one command token of its choice. Now, once you don't discard these, they're exhausted, and you can only do it once per game. And for a squadron, when attacking, a unique squadron can spend its veteran token to reroll any number of dice in its attack pool. So a reroll is pretty good, and that definitely works out. Now, I'll let you figure out how ships become veteran, etc., in the future. So there's ways to fix scarred ships. There's ways to become veteran, but at some point you might just want to be like, hey, I'm just going to start over because my fleet sucks. I've taken too much damage. I need to spend so many refit points to expand out my fleet that it's just a kind of a deterrent on, my team. So I'm just going to start over, and there's rules in here on that, how to retire your fleet. And then there's some stuff in here, like I said, some extra additional campaign rules. Once you become maybe a little bit more familiar with it, you can up it to the next level with Diplomat tokens, Spy Knight tokens, and Skilled Spacers token, which I was talking about earlier. And here's the rules for Hyperspace Retreat. It is on, I think it starts turn 4th and 5th rounds. The ship activates and reveals its command dial. It may immediately retreat and discard the dial. And you can do it as long as there is not one enemy ship with the experimental retrofit upgrade icon in its upgrade bar at distance 5. So as long as you're more than 12 inches away from one of those dirty gravity wells, well, you're good to go. And then there's multiplayer. Yay! So you can do the 4-fleet setup diagram, or the 4-fleet setup, which basically puts your guys in here, or the 6-fleet, which drops them in here at these points. Well, actually, it's not those points. You can be anywhere in there. This just signifies where the little deployment zone tokens are. Yep. Nope, the setup area markers, the little corner pieces. So in this one, it's not quite the full board. In this one, it is the full board. So, very similar to what we're used to, just turned sideways, but not quite the same. So it's pretty cool. There's a lot of information in here, and like I said, that's just a brief overview if and the quick references and on back. So that is basically in a nutshell how it's played. Obviously, this is a first look, not an in-depth review. So please vote with your hobby dollars if that sounds cool to you. Pick up the expansion here. Now, let's take a look at the mission cards, the objective cards rather, that are new in here. And of course, we have the returning favorites, the assaults, the defense, and the navigation ones, and then of course 8 of the new ones here, which I'm just going to leave out. We're not going to really talk about I want to spend more time talking about the ships. So you got these 8 new ones, so I'll just pause it here and you can kind of zoom in, freeze it, whatever, take a look at those right there. All right, welcome back. But there's some really cool ones in here. Definitely check these out. These are not just like, oh crap, just extra stuff in here. They're really cool. If you're into narrative missions, then you've got the 4 new ones of each of these, bringing the total. I think there was 12 of these in the initial box, so now we're looking at 16 of these bad boys, I believe. Oh, I can't see it all. I'm trying to make this work for you, I swear. All right, give me a second, and boom, nailed it. Okay, so pause it here and take a look at those. And we're back again. So now we're going to jump over to, and you notice there's some high victory point stuff in there, so it is nothing to sneeze at. All right, let's talk cold hard turkey when it comes to squadrons. So what this did was basically upgrade all of the first fighter packs from, I don't even know how long ago this was. It was fairly recent, I want to say, to better versions of themselves using some of the new mechanics that came in the Wave 5 stuff. Oh, they're not all going to fit on here either. Alright, so we'll just stop here and we'll talk about these. So you can either pause it right now and check these out yourself, or listen to my exciting commentary. So basically all of the standard versions are a point higher than their previous versions and come with some sort of upgrade. Like Black Squadron now comes with counter and does not come with swarm, but it has escort. So really cool mechanic there. And then the Valen Rudor upgrade still has Swarm. So your ace, so to speak, upgrade generally has the abilities of the previous version of that particular fighter, but with a little bit more of a oomph. So while the enemy squadron is engaged with another squadron, it cannot attack you, and of course has Brace and Scatter as well. But the anti-ship, anti-squadron is 3 black, and 3 black does the Lord's work. Then you got Tempest Squadron, which now has Bomber. So TIE Advance have Bomber on this one, and Escort. And then you've got Zentric Strom, and he, while he has a little bit crappier of a ship-to-ship combat, or squadron-to-squadron combat, when attacking you can choose another friendly squadron at distance 1. If you do, that squadron suffers 1 damage, but you may re-roll any number of attack dice. So I think that might be kind of worth it. It's like a little bit of a reverse kind of Howl Runner, and he has Escort as well. Then we got the Sabre Squadron and Sienna Ree, which was a big reveal, the art and everything, and hey, check this out, we got a new pilot here, new fluff, pretty cool. So the Sabre Squadron now has Snipe 4 instead of Counter, which the Interceptor previously had, and Swarm. And then over here, like I said, it goes back to the original ability, Counter 2 and Swarm. So definitely makes sense in that regard. So you can kind of tell what they had and what they gained just by kind of looking at it. And the TIE Bombers, Bomber now gets Grit, but over here has the Heavy for Captain Jonas. While a friendly ship is attacking a ship at distance 1, you may change 1 dice to a face with an accuracy icon. And you're probably like, well, I'm not so sure about that. But then when I look at it, I'm like, well, I kind of like that. He's almost like a mini Rhymer, for against fighters. Because remember, if you're throwing out accuracy, if you're getting guaranteed accuracy against shooting another squadron, that actually gives you a really good chance to burn down that squadron pretty quick. So it might not be as good against ships, but it definitely, having him in the middle of a formation with, execution type ships to take on squadrons to take on other squadrons, with that ability to always get an accuracy will really help out. It'll also help you hunt down smaller ships as well, or maybe deliver the coup de grace to an actual ship, a capital type ship, whereas before it's maybe just like a Hail Mary type thing. So I think out of all of these, I'm definitely looking at Captain Jonas as being the most versatile. Well, I take that back, because maybe the Rogue Squadron is, because finally we have an X-Wing Squadron with the Rogue ability. Rogue Squadron's here, finally, the first time in the history of ever in FFG tabletop games. We have Rogue Squadron, yay! So they get the Rogue ability for only a point more than the normal X-Wing. I think it's great. And then we got Biggs over here doing what Biggs does, taking damage, spitting out damage, throwing around damage. And he has, of course, the old abilities of Escort and Bomber instead of just Bomber. Pretty cool. Gold Squadron actually doesn't get any additional abilities, just gets extra ship-to-ship dice, or versus ship dice right there for their point. And then Nora Wexley, porting over from, I think she was on the ARC ship and X-Wing. Friendly squadrons with Bomber at distance 1 gain the critical effect when the defending hull zone loses 1 shield, which is great against ships with multiple shields, but probably not so much against ships with lower stuff. So you're definitely going to go super high capital ship hunting with this one, and maybe not so much the littler capital ships, because if you're getting stuff through with a black dice, chances are you don't really need to drop a shield at that point. You've probably already dropped them all. But that's just my 2 cents right there. So out of this batch of ship cards, my 2 favorites so far are Captain Jonas and Rogue Squadron. Yeah, we're going to go with that. Final answer. There might be some other mechanics there that just haven't figured out yet. And remember, too, there's a lot. Squadrons are definitely going to play a lot more in this game with some of the upgrade cards that come in Wave 5 ships. If you haven't seen that first look video yet, it's probably either the next one after this one in the series or the previous one. So make sure you either hang on or go back to check that one out. The final ships here are a Green Squadron A-Wing, of course, only 1 point more than the normal A-Wing, but now comes with a Bomber. All right, let's take out those Star Destroyers, get them, and counter 1 as well. Then you've got Shara Baer, the A-Wing Squadron pilot, typical of A-Wing thing. When performing a counterattack, each critical icon adds 1 damage to the damage total, which seems pretty good. I mean, counter 3 is nothing to sneeze at, and now the ability to add 1 to the total for your crit and your hit seems pretty good to me. Incidentally, she is Poe Dameron's mommy. That's right, she was on Endor fighting against the Imperials, and shortly thereafter, I guess, Poe was born with one of the ground commando guys, I believe it was. But anyways, just a little bit of fluff right there. And then we go into the B-Wings, which are still unfortunately movement 2, but there's ways to beef that up with the new Wave 5 ships. Bomber and Swarm on the Dagger Squadron right there, which definitely is cool for the B-Wings, because we know at a movement of 2, they ain't going anywhere pretty fast. And then you've got 10 Nub coming in hot. While attacking a squadron, you may spend 1 blue dice with the crit icon. If you do, each other enemy squadron at distance 1 of the defender suffers 1 damage. Ooh, that's spicy. So if you get that off, which you most definitely could because 1 black and 2 blue, chances of getting a critical are actually pretty high, 25% on the black die. And I think on the blue die, it's a little bit better, but I don't remember right off the top of my head. I know there's technically no misses on the blue die because of the accuracy, of course. But seems pretty solid. And then we've got the stations here, which play into some of the campaign mechanics and things and missions in this campaign box. Like I said, the armed station has 4 anti-squadron shots, 1 blue against capital ships. Unarmed don't really do that much at all, actually. And to draw a line of sight is just normal. You just grab the arc and you just draw a line to the nearest little blob, I guess, little amoeba station blob, and you're good to go there. They have 360 line of sight, etc., etc. So it makes it pretty easy. If you overlap anything per the normal obstacle rules, they're gonna get an extra. Or you're going to lose dice basically there. So that's pretty much it for the whole expansion here. Like I said, I think it's very good, a very good thing. It's definitely a boon of sorts for a lot of different reasons. Not only because we now have a way to upgrade our cards, our ships previously without having to come out with new plastic toys, but it also gives us a new way to play the game in general. So, I don't know. I like it. Please let us know what you think of this one. Omissions, clarifications, corrections, please leave it in the comments section below. Spiky bits. Make sure you stay in the trenches by becoming a supporter over on Patreon and also scoring yourself some free miniature swag in the process. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. Check out our site, spikybits.com, for all the hot hobby tutorials, news, rumors on all your favorite hobby topics. And head on over to thelongwar.net. That's the home of the battle reports for exclusive content, early access videos, and more. Become a veteran of the Long War today.